Hey, how you doing? It is Friday, 8th of July, 2022, NOTCAST 217. Normal service of a sort has been resumed. I am not going to be talking about politics. Today, I'm sure many of you will breathe a silent sigh of relief about that. I must admit, I don't particularly like talking about politics. It's quite emotive, it's sometimes quite depressing, and it's not vastly interesting to many people, including myself. I've always wanted the people running the country to just be good at their jobs. And the past few people that have been Prime Minister have been not very good at it, in my opinion, and that's been something which I haven't really enjoyed. I've been quite vocal about it, and in fact, most of yesterday, when I was talking about, the soon to be ex Prime Minister, is not even really around political beliefs. It's around competence. It's around somebody that he's not particularly good at their job. I'm kind of saying, well, these are the areas where I think they're really bad at it. I don't mind being oppressed, but oppress me competently. Do a good job of it. Don't be both terrible at it and have terrible ideas. If you're going to have terrible ideas, at least be able to pull off the execution. Um, but there you are. So today, episode 217, I am going to be talking about Underworld, their 2002 album. There it is, 100 Days Off, and the period that goes through to 2003 as well, including the Underworld 1992 to 2002 compilation release. This is a pretty interesting time to be a fan of the band. It was the first album that was released by the band as a duo after Darren had left, although obviously everything came out before um, this everything was a live album recorded while Darren was still in the band. This is the first studio album that's released by the duo of Underworld, the lineup which has now kind of remained solid for at least 22 years, although they did do some shows without Rick Smith when he was very poorly indeed in 2015, and I'm glad that he has returned back to health. So 100 Days Off, released late 2002, the fourth album by Underworld Mark II, the first album by Underworld Mark III. I regard Dub No Bass with My Head Man as obviously one of the best albums of all time, but also as Underworld's debut. The other albums merely being a band with some of the members sharing the same name, if that makes sense. Obviously, that's very similar to Pantera and their terrible glam metal years when they had Diamond Darrell instead of Dimebag Darrell, and they've disowned everything and deleted it. That is not necessarily the case here, but certainly I think the band at this point have now reached maturity. They've reached their sound, and from here on they are refining it. Obviously, some bands reach their sound with their first single, especially bands like AC/DC, Iron Maiden, for example. And after that, everything is just refining and repeating the same idea to varying degrees of success. Underworld went through a process of evolution. There's that theory about sculpture. I can't remember who said it now, but someone said, "Well, how did you make the sculpture?" I went, "Well, I just chipped away all the bits that didn't look like the subject of the sculpture, whoever that might be." Underworld were probably doing the same thing here. They were slowly changing their lineup, chipping away all the bits that didn't look or feel quite like Underworld. Darren left amicably, as I understand it, in 1999. The band talked to each other through Twitter and text and things like that. And I think I saw Darren tweet them the other day and say, "Guys, don't forget to send me a copy of the 12-inch with their rare re-release of Juanita." This is the first studio album by the duo of Rick Smith and Carl Hyde, and I love this album, by the way. Now, there's a little bit of prehistory around that. 2001, to all intents and purposes, publicly was a very, very quiet year for Underworld. They didn't perform any concerts. They didn't officially release any music. What they did do, and I was very, very deeply ingrained in the internet. They released MP3s to download from their website in a free section. Here was a compilation CDR which I made in 2001 of those tracks. So at that point we were still in the dial-up world, and for those of you who perhaps don't have memories quite as long as me, the dial-up world was really boring. You could get up to speeds of 64 kilobytes per second if you were really lucky. I'm currently working on well over 20 times that amount. Even 1 meg per second is regarded as criminally painfully slow these days, and that's 50 times the speed which I downloaded these on. You access the phone. You access the internet through your phone. You dialed up from your landline. The line dropped every 2 hours. Firstly, so that you might go, oh yeah, there's a world outside of the internet, isn't there? Secondly, so that if anybody tried to call you, they could actually get through to you. Thirdly, I think because Wi-Fi hadn't really kicked off yet, our Wi-Fi really started late 2002, as absolutely revolutionary and life-changing. So, for example, downloading an MP3 in 2001, if you wanted to download a 4-minute song at 64k per second, and the song was 128k, and bearing in mind 64k was the maximum you could go, it was probably normally much lower than that. I used to remember I set my alarm at 2 o'clock in the morning so I could dial back in, and I could oh, hang on, I'm being told off by the cat. Let's go and see the cat. I'm sure you heard that plaintive mewing there from His Highness the kitten, was telling me off. I'm going to see, and do you want to come in and have a chat? Come on, darling. Hey, how are you? Come and say hello to people. Ah, here he is. This is Price. He doesn't want to hang out. He just hates the idea of a closed door. As soon as a door is closed, doesn't matter what it's closed for, he wants to go in. He's maybe one should think about it more as a relationship anarchist. Any door that's closed, he wants to go through it. See, now he's telling somebody else that's got a door that's closed. I've got a door that's open now. Absolutely typical, isn't it? So let's go back to dial-up. So the speed that you had at dial-up, that was the fastest you could go. It wasn't the fastest you were going at. So they said, oh, speeds of up to 64k per second, which means that if you were downloading a song at a whopping 128k per second, it would take you at least twice the length of the song to download the song, and generally it took about 1.5 hours, 2 hours to download a song. So if you were able to dial up and you had that terrible noise, then you had 2 hours before your phone got disconnected. You couldn't download long songs because long songs couldn't be downloaded in 2 hours. If you were lucky, you could get maybe an 8-minute song. So I remember I would set my alarm in the middle of the night to download Pet Shop Boys MP3s. Set the alarm. I went to bed at like 1, set the alarm at 5, so I could go and download, or at 3, download another song, maybe then get up at 7, download a song whilst I was getting ready, disconnect, go to work, and that way you could get maybe 3 songs, 4 songs a night if you were going really well. It was terrible. It really was awful. And when broadband came, suddenly all the walls turned to glass and you could just download songs very quickly. It was awful. It really was, and I do prefer it now. But there was that time when the internet was a period of infinite promise, where you could go, oh, actually, that we can actually communicate to other human beings without an editor, without a filter, without a moderator necessarily. As you can just talk through ideas. See, the door's open now. He's telling next door off for not letting him in because the door is closed. You hear that plaintive little mewing there from His Highness the Priester. What a terrible name. Actually, I should probably never do that again. Underworld released a number of songs, various studio jams, early mixes, offcuts from the album that clearly weren't going to make it. And those were designed to go onto the website so you could download them. So they had, for example, studio jams of Oik Oik, a version of Skyscraper I Love You, Air Towel, Something Like a Mummer and Born Slippy, an early demo of King of Snake, a version of Thing in a Book, Stagger, a quick bit of Rope for the Web, tracks like Vocoder Monks, for example. All those type of things were all available there, and you could download them if you wanted, and they weren't released officially anywhere else. Hopefully when there is a super mega duper super deluxe edition of 100 Days Off, that we will get a mega disc set that will have those tracks in good decent quality, because they were uploaded at 128k. That's a pretty low bit rate these days for material like that. But no, I was also very prolific on the Dirty mailing list and the website as well. Basically a gobshite. That was my hobby. I was talking to strangers on the internet about bands that I loved. What's changed? Absolutely nothing, of course. And there was people were burning CDRs and sending them around to each other in the post. There was an early version of the album, early version of 100 Days Off, which leaked in late 2001. It's now on YouTube. It's called Ansem. It has a slightly different configuration of tracks, has a couple of different mixes on there. So, for example, there's a track on here. The opening track on this is Mo Move. The version of Mo Move that's on Ansem is 13.5 minutes long, and it comes in the middle of the LP. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. We need to talk about this LP and the singles that came out with it as well. So the band started touring 2002. Playing things like Creamfields festivals, Prague and Liverpool and places like that, Birmingham, Gatecrasher, all broadcast on the radio. MP3s were downloadable. I was heavily into downloading all of the live shows as well. What I realised pretty quickly is, unlike previous tours, the band had a fairly static set list and they stuck to it. Obviously, they had two people. Rick was the one that was doing most of the music, the live mixing, and so on. So there wasn't, he didn't necessarily have the freeness that maybe he had in the three-piece version to say to somebody, can you load up? And then they loaded up whatever the song was, and then they locked that song in. So the shows were less improvisational. The arrangements within the songs were still improvisational. Elements of the songs kind of ebbed and flowed and were added and removed. But the performance was far more solid, far more structured than perhaps it had been previously. And the first release from the album was the first single, 2 months off, released on 2 CD singles and a couple of 12 inches here. And also an additional 12 inch. This is one of the retail 12 inches of 2 months off. If you know that song, it's the song that goes, you bring light into a dark place. The band play it very, very frequently. It is, put technically, a banger live, and it hasn't dated. It's a song of positivity and optimism about bringing light into a dark place. Your skin so beautiful. The 12 inch here is backed with, it has the Underworld mix, and on side B it has the King Unique Sunspots vocal mix, which is they started to send remixes to third parties rather than just constantly churning out lots and lots of different alternate mixes of tracks. There's a promo 12 inch here as well. This has the John Kyophone vocal mix and the vocal mix part 2 on the promo 12 inch. Again, slightly too many remixes for me to remember which ones are and aren't any good. And there was also, in the lockdown period, the band did what they called the limited drops. So this was a limited edition 12 inch of 2 months off from 2021, which has an early version of it on side 2, the R18 DAT July 2001 version, and then on the other side it has the live at Glastonbury 2016 version there. But that's a lovely bit of graphics there, which obviously has heavily inspired my t-shirt, which I bought. I did buy a lot of Underworld t-shirts at the time. I would go to see them. I get very, very warm. I'd buy a t-shirt and then I'd sell it later on eBay for money. But these were, fabulous times to be a fan of the band. I was still young enough to want to stay up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and go and see Underworld and bounce around. These days, being young just looks very, very tiring because I'm not that young. I hate to break it to everyone, I had a birthday in the past week or so. I'm feeling every one of my years now. But yeah, so 2 months off, a fabulous first single to be released from the album, a very kind of confident, assured track that tells you nothing to worry about, still Underworld, you still love us. It's not like when The Cure released the 13th and everyone's going, you guys have changed. Or, when I think REM did something like Ebo the Letter, for example. Some bands were putting out very atypical songs that didn't sound anything like them at all, and sometimes absolutely fudging their career in the way. But no, 2 months off still is an absolute classic. I saw it at their last pre-lockdown gig when they played Wembley Arena in December 2019. That doesn't feel like 2.5 years ago. Although it was. So that's the 12-inch versions. There was also 2 CD singles. Is the CD single one of the worst inventions in the history of mankind? Survey says not as bad as the cassette single, but still pretty ropey, the CD single there. wonderful use of the Earth's resources. 80 minutes of music, and you're only going to put about 20 minutes on it thanks to the chart rolls. This one is a 3-tracker which has the John Seaphone remix, the Underworld mix, and an extra track called Tiny Clicks on there as well, which is utterly cromulent. It's quite good, it's not amazing. There's also this CD single which has the radio edit, the King Unique Sunspots mix, and a track called Headset as well. Which again, I don't remember Headset at all, which is odd because I listened to it this week, but I don't remember it in the slightest. But there you go. That, you know, the band were producing a lot of material at this point, and then they followed that up with the album 100 Days Off. I love this cover, by the way. I think it is lovely and silly. And what more do you want? This is an original 2002 vinyl edition on the JBO Junior Boy's Own in a gatefold sleeve. Lovely bit of design. It just says something about it. You look at it and go, yeah, that's Underworld. I don't really know how to describe it. I love the slightly silliness around it. It's clearly a microscopic photograph of something that's absolutely tiny and miniature. There you are. There's a relatively standard inner sleeve. Now the inner sleeves, this, I don't like this on inner sleeves. They open at the side, which means you have to be careful about how you stick the LPs in, because otherwise they could just come sliding out, which is not something you want to do. I have bought records in online many years ago where people have put them in the sleeves, and they've put the inner sleeves so that the record can just roll around inside the package, and it arrives to me broken. I am still disappointed about that. So there you go, there's an inner sleeve, and it has some text on it, but the text itself doesn't really mean anything. It's almost a random thing. Is that sometimes the Underworld approach with Tomato is creating something that has a distinct visual identity, but it doesn't necessarily communicate anything apart from a sense of confusion at the way in which the world kind of works and operates. Here is disc 2, and disc 2 has 5 tracks on it. Of course, if you have the CD, most people were buying CDs in those days. I was buying CDs. They were my dominant format because, as I said, I was renting. I was living in quite a small flat. At that point, you have this one here, the 100 Days Off, which, because 100 Days Off isn't listed on the sleeve apart from there, in order to make sure people knew what it was, they put a sticker on the front of that. There you are. Woohoo! 100 Days Off. And then you can see the reflection of my phone. An infinite monkey cage of Underworld. And the booklet there kind of folds out. It's they clearly spent a little bit more time on the graphics for the booklet than they did for the LP, because as you can see, this is a close-up of it, and there's more text, but it just feels like it's a, you know, an Underworld package, really. So 100 Days Off is, in my opinion, a very good Underworld record. There's no sense of hesitation. It's confident, it's assertive, it delivers straight out of the gate, and it does everything. And you're not listening to it and going, oh yeah, they've lost the guy, but it does all the things. Like sometimes when a band changes its lineup and you listen to it and you go, what you can hear is the sound of absence. Even on Pink Floyd, when Roger Waters wasn't in them, the post-Roger albums, they're very good, but they're not the same. You can hear what Roger brought to the band by what is no longer there. And with this, it's really difficult actually when you listen to this to hear what Darren brought that's no longer there. There was maybe a sense of fluidity. There was maybe something that's a little bit more dance floor friendly, I think, possibly. This is a more sedate album, it's more mature, but that's about it. You don't immediately listen to it and go, something's missing. When I listen to Underworld now, I don't necessarily feel that there's anything missing. When I listen to Depeche Mode's Ultra, for example, or especially Exciter, I very clearly hear the absence of something that is no longer there. When something is lost and it can't be replaced. Well, I think that's a Coldplay lyric. Sorry, forgive me for quoting Coldplay at you. But when something is lost and it can't be replaced, and you end up listening to it and you go, you can hear what it is by the absence. It's kind of like when you look at a black hole, allegedly. In traditional science fiction, you don't necessarily see a black hole. What you see is just blackness. You see an absence of something, and you go, that's where the thing used to be, whatever the thing was. But now, 100 Days Off is a really great Underworld album. At this point, the band were still kind of having hits, maybe not being quite as popular. They were 6 years into their commercial success, post Born Slippy. Financially, they were independent and secure. They didn't have to worry about necessarily selling huge amounts or having hits anymore. They had a fan base that was built in so much as there were people that were going to be with them on the journey for a long period of time. Most bands, if they've been going for a while, have released a number of albums. They have an inbuilt fan base. They know they will sell a certain number of copies. They will be able to headline a certain type of venue, a certain size of a venue. And it's very difficult actually sometimes to work out, well, what kind of size venue is that band going to play? So I saw Jesus Jones this week. I saw them at the Tunbridge Wells Forum, which is 250 people. For a band that had a number one hit single in America, albeit 30 years ago, they have a certain size fan base and they know they're going to sell a certain number of tickets, pretty much irrespective of where they go. And that is who they are, and that is how they work, and that's the world that they've managed to build for them, and they're able to do it, and it works. And that's a wonderful thing is that if you're in a band, is that we can do a certain number of tickets, we can make a certain amount of money, and if you're able to make that work, that's an ability to be mercifully free from the ravages of commercial intervention and interests. Obviously, every band wants to make a good living out of it. That's that idea, a terrible idea that bands are selling out, and it's like, well, what's wrong with selling out necessarily? Now, if you compromise the music that you're making, if you compromise the art, if you don't follow your artistic intentions and your integrity and where your art wants to take you, then you can very clearly tell when some people are not necessarily following their artistic instincts and they're following their commercial instincts. Bowie's Let's Dance, and to a far more obvious extent, Bowie's Tonight, for example, are clearly albums made by somebody that wanted to be very, very successful. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be very, very successful, as long as you don't make it very obvious that you're diluting your activity whilst you do so. I have an episode coming up about Bowie's Tonight. I will not be pleasant about that. You may need to call the emergency services, as I will have committed a murder. But no, 100 Days Off is, in my opinion, it's a great Underworld LP, and it's one that knows its audience in so much as Underworld are getting older. They're not necessarily going out clubbing every night anymore, but you can't be who you are without coming from where you've come from, and part of that involves remembering where you've come from. Quote that film, The Therm, or is it ID? I can't remember the one which says "Never forget where you came from." But strange film that, but it's really important because you can't get to where you are without having been where you've been. And Underworld clearly are the product of their past here, and they still have that eye on the dance floor. But most records aren't made at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, although it's suspiciously close to 10 o'clock on a Friday night now, and I'm doing a podcast instead of staying out going to see a band, so I suspect I might be quite a boring old bloke now. I might be, I think there's about 3 middle-aged men in the world that don't do a YouTube series about their records. I'm not one of them. But what you do is you listen to it and you kind of go, right, so you remember who you are and where you've come from, and you've still got an arm. But this is this isn't necessarily music for Friday nights. This is music for Saturday afternoons when you wished you were going out on Saturday nights. Or, for example, for me, I spend an awful lot of time when I'm travelling listening to Underworld. It's ideal travelling music. Not necessarily commuting music, but travelling music. So it's music that I listen to when I'm in motion and in movement. And as I've said in a previous episode, Underworld albums, the stream of consciousness lyrics, the sounds that you've got that are vaguely like, they're the sounds of if a city could make a record, it would sound like Underworld. And there's definitely an element of that in 100 Days Off. It opens with Mo Move, track 1. I can't believe I've got 24 minutes in and I've only mentioned track 1. I'm going to have to speed this one up, otherwise this is going to last 4 hours because it's a 10-track LP. Opens with Mo Move, which I've seen them play live. It's an undulating kind of gentle groove that suddenly explodes into all manner of things, and lots of lovely synth stabs in there. On this LP, 6 minutes 53. Oh dear. 6 minutes 53 seconds long. On the Ansem version that was originally prepared in 2001, the early configuration of the album Mo Move is 13 minutes long, so I will post a link to it on YouTube down in the comments section. It's a great track. I wish they'd play it live more often. To be honest, I wish they'd play more songs live. I wish they'd just play live, although they haven't played the UK for a while. I've been very lucky to be able to see Underworld something like 8 or 10 times during the course of my life. I saw them twice on the tour for this album, once at Brixton Academy and once at Stafford Park or in Chelmsford. No, Highlands Park in Chelmsford. Fuck it, I don't know which park. It was in Chelmsford anyway. I had the chance to go and see, I think it was Coldplay. No, I had a chance to see Red Hot Chili Peppers or Underworld. And I'm always reminded of what Nick Cave said about Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is no matter where he goes in the world, there's always some garbage on the stereo. And every time he asks, what is this garbage? The answer is always, it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And you know, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are very definitely one of the very worst bands in the history of mankind. You know, they're a band that have made being an adolescent 13-year-old, and this is no criticism of 13-year-olds, by the way, because I was one once, and everyone who is older than the age of 13 has been 13 once. But you know, they're Red Hot Chili Peppers are a band that are absolutely obsessed with their genitals and what their genitals can do, and drugs. And neither a particularly interesting subject matters for me to listen to when somebody's singing, and the lyrics do have to matter. They don't have to be necessarily amazing. I love Motorhead. Some of their lyrics, not so great, although just because you've got the power doesn't mean you've got the right, is one of the best lyrics of all time. At the same point, a song like Orgasmatron, not the best lyrics on the planet, but certainly better than the entire of the Red Hot Chili Peppers recorded career in its entirety. Yeah, I've talked myself into a corner there. Quick, abort, change subject. So, yeah, Mo Move, great opening track. Wish they'd play it live more often. 2 months off, still played live to this day. Absolute banger. Love the song. Always goes down well live. It's got this wonderful kind of escalating set of riffs and rhythms. So Underworld songs, I don't think they're necessarily written. They don't follow the conventional verse chorus break, guitar solo kind of structure. They're very, very different from that. It's very similar to you know, experimental music in so much as things like Philip Glass, Steve Reich, those type of things, is that you have a series of interlocking, interpolating riffs and musical motifs that kind of form together to create a structure that eventually reaches a climax. But it's not anything anywhere near as standard as a standard song structure. I mean, certainly if you try to go, well, where's the chorus in Cowgirl? The answer is chorus. There isn't really one. There's like about 4 and none at the same time. Now that's the same thing with 2 months off. Track 3 is Twist. Again, a longer version of Twist is on the Ansem version from 2001. Then we have Solar System, Little Speaker, Trim, SG, Dinosaur Adventure 3D, Ballet Lane, and Luetin. These are all really good, solid songs, actually. I love this album. It works best as a whole. I don't even think about this album as being a series of songs. It almost feels like it's one song that's actually divided into 10 separate parts, because the sequencing on an album is really, really important. If you go all the way back in history to NOTCAST, I think number 17, way back when, at the dawn of time, when I was a mere slip of a man, I talked about sequencing, and sequencing is something that Underworld have always got right. I'm not afraid to change the sequencing on an album if I don't think the sequencing is particularly good. I've never changed the sequencing on an Underworld LP. I've added songs to the end. So, for example, I added Rares onto Dub No Bass. I added Born Slippy onto the end of Second Toughest. But generally, I don't change the sequencing on Underworld LPs because they're really solid. They're very, very well sequenced. Each song is the perfect song to be in the perfect space. Even the gaps between the songs are the right lengths. So I absolutely love 2 months off, and 100 Days Off is one of my very favourite albums. So the band played live. They released a single. That single number 2, the last single from the LP, much like actually Second Toughest in the Intims, only had 2 singles from it. It had Pearl's Girl Actually, it only had one, didn't it? It had Pearl's Girl, and then later there was Juanita that was released as a single in a very limited form on a 12-inch in the US. But no, second single, Dinosaur Adventure 3D. Again, taking the idea from the original kind of cover that we had elsewhere, which is micro photography of very small things. This is clearly a disco potato, and I didn't think that would be a phrase I would ever have mentioned. It's backed with an RCM version, which I think is remixed by Underworld, and then there's a Funk Devoid vocal remix. So the 12 inches were clearly still designed for club play, for jumping around in dark rooms. There was a promo 12-inch of Dinosaur Adventure 3D. Here it is. It's got the sharp side remix and the Chicken Lips version adventure. Which I don't remember a huge amount about. And then there was a CD single. There was 2 CD singles. These singles had different B-sides. So this had it had a track called Like a Swimmer, and it had the Funk Devoid vocal mix and the RCM version. So Underworld was still remixing their own tracks there. There is perhaps a slightly different version of a Disco Potato. And then there's a second CD single. This features the edit, 7-inch mix, and a 16-minute, 16-second track called Ansem, which gave its name to the 2001 configuration of the LP. Again, these are great tracks that just didn't fit onto the LP. You know, the album is 75, 80 minutes long. It is absolutely stuffed to the gills. The band had 4 or 5 extra songs that they put out as B-sides. They also had several extra songs that they put out as download tracks. And I'll put links to the download tracks on YouTube in the comments section. But they were very, very prolific. But there weren't that many remixes. There was a big fan remix culture that was going on at the time. I remixed Dinosaur Adventure. I remixed 2 Months Off as well, and I put them on Mixcloud, and I'll put my copies of those links down there as well. But there were also, every track off the album was remixed by somebody inside the band's fan community. They played live. I saw them at Brixton Academy on the Saturday night in November 2002. They finished at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I went with my mate Dave, and we got the last bus. We got the night bus. We got home to his house at 4 o'clock in the morning. It took so long. The sun was coming up, and that was in November. So we got home maybe 5:30. We were really knackered. When we got back, we went, fuck it, we're going all the way through, stuck the thing on DVD, watched it, and we were like, I'm knackered and I should go to bed. I should point out, at that point, I was either, I think I just met my girlfriend, my then girlfriend, and I was still very much, I was going like, oh, is this actually a thing, or is this not going to be a thing? I didn't really know. And we were, in that bit of a relationship where you're not quite sure if you're a couple, but you're kind of orbiting each other with the idea that might be happening. Definitely some kissing going on, but we're not quite sure whether it's a thing yet. Yeah, I think that's when it happened. I don't remember. It was 20 years ago now. Things get a bit hazy after about 20 years. You kind of forget that stuff happens. People say, well, if you were there, if you remember it, you weren't there. Well, I was there. I don't remember it, but I don't know. And then I think about when I got into music in 1991, and then 20 years before that, the Beatles were still a band. Jimi Hendrix was still alive. Pink Floyd hadn't made Dark Side of the Moon. Led Zeppelin were an up-and-coming band. So as far as 1991, they were dinosaurs. They were dead and gone. Whereas now, I kind of think, I could have been stood next to a guy that saw Led Zeppelin at the 100 Club or something. I don't know. Did they play the 100 Club? Who knows? I'm not sure. So, yeah. So anyway, I saw Underworld at the Brixton Academy. 2 guys, absolute belter of a show, and finished very late. I was very, very tired, but I was ecstatic because I'd had a really terrible year 2000. And there were times in the year 2000 where I thought, I'm not sure I'm going to get through this. I'm not sure how many more kicks and bites and punches my soul can take. And one of the things which I kept to, and I've done this a number of times, is when I've been held on to things like, if I get through this, my reward will be seeing a band. My reward will be seeing Underworld at Brixton, or I'll be seeing U2 in Turin, or seeing Depeche Mode in Rome, or something like that. That was the thing. that brought me on, and music has been often the lifeline that I've clung to um, when times have been really really tough. And when I talk about the next Underworld period in the next episode, I'll talk about how even at some points things were so bad, even that was starting to fail me. So I saw them at Brixton. Then they played where is it, Somerset House in July, and I didn't go because I was skint. It's just one of the things that happens. But I did see them in Chelmsford in August. Again, I had the option: Red Hot Chili Peppers, Underworld, guys with socks on their dicks, or music made by people with brains. I went for music made by people with brains in the big heads, not people with brains in the little heads. And I went to see Underworld, and it was it's really empty. There was maybe 1,000 people there in the field. There was 80,000 people in the other field watching Red Hot Chili Peppers. More full them and their Californication, and whatever their lesbian seagulls or whatever it is, I don't know. But for me and about 1,000 other people, Underworld, absolutely banging, and absolutely loved it. Very tired. I didn't see Underworld again for a very long time, which I will explain in the next episode. And that they closed off 2003 with their first compilation album, Underworld 1992 2002. This is the first compilation release that they made. There was a vinyl edition on 4 LPs, cost about 60 quid or something. I didn't buy it. I didn't have the space, I didn't have the money. And what this does is this presents a chronological sequence through most of Underworld's singles from that period. So there's Big Mouth, Dirty, Skyscraper, I Love You, Res, Spiky, Dirty Epic, Dark and Long, Dark Train. So on disc one alone, you've got album debuts of Big Mouth, Dirty, Res, Spiky, and Dark Train. So that's an album in itself. Then on disc two, you've got Cowgirl, Born Slippy, Pearl's Girl, Jumbo, Push Upstairs, Mona, Shudder, 8 Ball, taken from the soundtrack to the film The Beach, which I haven't mentioned, but that was released in the year 2000, and 2 Months Off. So you've got almost a new Underworld album of classic jams and tracks from the early years on the greatest hits, and it comes in a lovely kind of fold-out, sleevey type thing that turns into a poster. I don't know, would anyone actually do that as a poster? I'm not quite sure. And it has lots and lots of lyrics on there and things, and it doesn't necessarily, I mean, I don't understand it. I've looked at it and I thought, well, I'm going to look at that in the mirror, and does it make sense to look at it in the mirror? I don't know. There's text on there. I don't quite know what the text is there for. I don't quite know what it says. And then there's a tiny bit of extra kind of text to explain what's going on. But as with Underworld, if you understand it, they've almost definitely failed in their graphic design approach. That is a really great, solid, super duper introductory kind of best of. If you want, well, I don't know, try this. Also, it's probably really, really cheap actually to get the CD edition. Born Slippy was remixed and reissued. I never felt entirely comfortable about the fact it was remixed and reissued, but it was, and of course, like Cowgirl, I bought it. It was backed with remixes by Atomic Hooligan and Paul Oakenfold, as well as a re-recorded version by the band themselves with a different arrangement. And there was also a DVD single featuring the Danny Boyle video, a down version, which is a slightly different edit of the track, very ambient, very low-paced, very almost kind of like a shadow of the original Born Slippy. And we had the original version on there as well. And there are a couple of 12-inches, because you can't have Underworld without 12 inches. Here's the promo 12-inch. The promo 12-inch here has the Atomic Hooligan mix on and the London Electricity mix on. This one has definitely seen some club play over the years before it made its way to me. Frankly, it's showing its age. In fact, it hasn't even got a paper in a sleeve. I'm going to have to fix that when I go downstairs. And then here's the commercial 12-inch of Born Slippy 2003, which features the 12-inch version of the track, which is the only place I think you can get the extended full-length 2003 re-recording, and the Paul Oakenfold mix on the B-side. This one clearly has been knackered and played in the clubs. It's got writing on the labels, as you can see, to let the DJ know which one is the actual version to play. when you're spinning it on the ones and twos. But again, a fabulous remix. I really recommend giving the 2003 version a listen. It puts the song in a new light and it adds new parts to it. It's Born Slippy, but not as we know it, Jim. And that brings Underworld's 100 Days Off, 2002, 2003, to a close. The end of the first decade of the band's existence, the first album that the band did as a duo. They played some great live shows during this period. The album is very good, very underrated actually. I think Underworld albums tend to be forgotten now because people think about, well, they're the band that did Born Slippy and they haven't really done anything else since then. And there's so much more to the story than that. The thing is that, obviously, like all great artists, is that you either get old or die trying. Underworld got old, and when you're old, sometimes people don't think of you as being as cool as you were when you weren't old anymore. And so, therefore, the fact that you're old is automatically a problem. So, I mean, if you're an athlete, I mean, think about these bands are running marathons. They're not running sprints. They can't go and do the 100-meter dash anymore. Nobody can. What the true sign of a great man is not necessarily how it felt at the time, but how it will look when you're looking at it in the rearview mirror. I've got to tell you, I think 100 Days Off is a brilliant Underworld album. Strongly recommend it. Chock full of remixes, lots of live shows, and it's some really great stuff in there. Hopefully, this has been not boring and not as heavy or as angry as the previous episode about Boris Johnson. If it has, I've clearly got it absolutely way wrong indeed. But there you are. Also, that's about it for now. I've got a couple of other things I am going to be talking about. Coming up, I'm probably going to do David Bowie's Tonight album. I'm going to talk about The REM, Metallica, possibly Flaming Lips, Guns N' Roses, Metallica. I've mentioned Metallica, haven't I? Have I mentioned Metallica? Yeah, definitely. Quite in a few other bands. Depeche Mode, for example. I've got probably about 80 of these lined up. If you've got any suggestions for what you'd like me to talk about, do put a comment in there. Unless, of course, it's unpleasant or nasty, at which point I probably won't. That's the thing with being on the internet, is you curate your own experience of what the internet is for you. It's a community, but you curate your own community in the same way that your social life, you choose where you go, you choose who you hang out with. Unless you're in a village where there's 2 flat roof pubs and there's 3 people. Certainly when I was growing up in Birmingham, towards the end of my time in Birmingham, I've been to every club. I've probably met every girl. I was like, I need to go somewhere else. Now, that makes it sound as if I was far more popular than I actually was. I wasn't. A lot of people said to me that they didn't want to go out with me, let's put it that way. But there was a point where you kind of go, when you're on the internet, is you curate your own experience. You go to the places that interest you. You follow the things that you find interesting and that feed your brain. And if you don't, you're probably doing the internet wrong, to be honest. Although it depends who you talk to. I'm probably doing the internet wrong. But then again, I was first on the internet in 1991, so I don't particularly care now. Those days, it was all wrong then. It's probably still wrong now. So that is 100 Days Off. That is 2 months off. That is Dinosaur Adventure 3D, Born Slippy, and the best of 1992 to 2002. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, and I will see you all again some other time. And let's not forget, can I copy the expression that Matchstick Man has on the front? No, probably not, actually. Let's try it again. Who knows? No, I don't think so. I think the album cover was better. That's why I don't like album covers that don't have pictures of people on, because, for example, if the cover had been Carl Hyde and Rick Smith going, it probably wouldn't have been as good. Still, there you are. That's a lovely way to end. Stay beautiful, like and subscribe. I'll see you all soon. As nobody very important will have said, yeah, take care of yourselves. See you later. Bye.